Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of the Dan Banchero Show. I'm your host and a major league piece of work, Dan Banchero. Today we're going to be talking about sick of sickness. Yeah, I don't know about any of you, but for myself, there's been times in my life where I was tired of feeling mentally and physically the way I was. But I had no idea on how to make things better and change these things. But through being desperate and seeking knowledge or suggestions or ideas, I've been able to come across some great concepts, and things have been gotten a lot better over the years, slowly but surely. And today, like I've said before, I laugh pretty much all day long, even in times of trouble. So we're going back to Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Dr. Wayne Dyer. He wrote this book, like I mentioned last time, based on Lau Tzu and the Tao Te Ching, the 81 verses. There are 81 proverbs that you could probably read in an afternoon if you wanted to, but he wrote a few essays on each one, so we're going to be getting into that. And we're going to be getting into the Sermon on the Mount by Emmett Fox. Great book. He evaluates what Jesus spoke of in Matthew chapter 5 in the Bible with the Beatitudes, and breaks things down a little bit more clear, a little more thorough, and one of the greatest books I've ever read myself, and I can read over and over again and apply in everyday life. So, first off, Sermon on the Mount, chapter 5 is called Treasure in Heaven. This chapter is in the middle of the book. Emmett Fox begins in this chapter here on page 86. He says, "When you know the truth of being, you are as literal fact, and not merely in a rhetorical sense, the absolute monarch of your own life. You make your own conditions, and you can unmake them. You make and unmake your own health. You attract to yourself certain kinds of people and certain conditions, and others you repel. You attract to yourself riches or poverty, and peace of mind or fear, entirely in accordance with the way in which you govern your own kingdom. Of course, the world does not know this. It supposes that the conditions of one's life are largely made for him by outer circumstances and by other people." So, certain thoughts have come, through my head. And a lot of it was just by the way I was growing up and things I was exposed to, whether it was life situations or television or, hanging out with certain people. And as life went on, I went from being a teenager to a young adult to, I guess you call me an adult, I don't know. I'm going to be closing on 40 years old and don't feel anywhere near that, and nor do I act that way. But I would blame my feelings and reactions on circumstances, rules, customs, people's words and actions. And until I was in enough pain, where we're talking about being sick of sickness, I wasn't able to understand or even seek ways of applying certain concepts to oppose what I didn't want to feel. So if I was feeling sadness, I didn't know that I can apply joy to situations. Or, if something happened in my life, I didn't realize that this situation might bring upon something that is an opportunity. So, like, for example, when I was 13 and my dad died at the age of 40, that was a very traumatic experience, right? But through him losing his job, us losing our home, having to move into a small apartment, having to share a room with my sister, I moved to this little spot in Millbrae called Lincoln Circle, right? And this is about a year before I transitioned from St. Dunstan's Catholic School to Mills High School, which is a public school, right? So the kids in this neighborhood that I was exposed to as a result of these tragic events prepared me for high school, and I got to meet a bunch of new friends and build a lot of lifelong relationships. And you guys all know who you are. Lincoln Circle. Oh my gosh. I could do a whole segment on Lincoln Circle. Anyway, so One door shut, the death of my father. Another door opened, all these new relationships that I had built, and now I have lifelong friends. So I had to change what was going on and in my mind in order to oppose me grieving certain situations. And that's just one example. So, a lot of people like to use the St. Francis prayer because, St. Francis, when he made this prayer, I don't believe he was, intending on saying, God, give me peace. God, give me light. He was addressing a negative situation or feeling and asking God to make him the opposite. So in daily life, I can do those same type of things. Google the St. Francis prayer if you haven't heard it before. It's world renowned in all types of faiths. So if I'm feeling hostile or angry, I got to be in enough pain to say, okay, I'm no longer going to allow these thoughts and feelings to dominate my life. I can no longer blame these people for my reaction to life. So in return, I need to find a way to apply some type of kindness when I'm in sensing hostility or anger. Let's say I made a mistake, or let's say there's something that's caused me some type of discomfort that I don't want to face or go through. I have to apply some type of courage, or I have to pray for some type of courage. I need to start seeking solutions as opposed to being obsessed with a challenge or what I believe is wrong or some type of a problem. So if I'm in the direction of solutions, I'm no longer obsessing over the problem and saying, to myself how wrong it is or how much I disagree with it. When I'm having these types of thoughts, I'm not being a successful human being. Many ideas we have in society are brought upon by the media or political parties or faiths or families or what have you. Maybe it might be a corporate policy. So, especially when it comes to change, because life, as we all know, is constantly changing all around us. There's no way of getting around it. I need to be able to apply open-mindedness as opposed to rigidity or bias. And through these life circumstances that I've had, yes, I felt some pain, but after doing some contemplation and reviewing the events that came after these tragic events or these challenges I went through, I'm able to identify what the opportunities were, which ones I took advantage of and created better experiences, and which ones I failed to because I was too busy obsessing on the problem or what I disagree with. Another thing I've been through, oh man, this drove me to alcoholism 15 years ago. I had so many thoughts of fear, and I could not make a decision to do something. I was so just caught up in, oh man, what am I going to do? Well, if I do this, then this is going to happen. So I had to be detached from freedom of consequences, right? I had to start taking initiative, taking some type of action, and just making a decision. Because I would procrastinate, or I'd be in the state of indecision. And what happened to a guy like me who was a party animal, I was already becoming chemically dependent on alcohol. So slowly my alcoholism progressed in the early 2000s. And I was not at any time realizing that I was no longer having a good time with booze. I was actually masking my fear of indecision. And hence more consequences came. So I got to make some type of an attempt to practice attributes of goodwill rather than suffer any more of these consequences based on the negative concepts or behaviors in order to get through everyday life. It's just a fact of life. It's like that old saying, I don't get what I want, I get what I am. It's the law of attraction. I think I spoke of this last time I was on this this show or whatever I'm doing. If I'm coming into a room and I'm practicing hostility or fear or frantic behavior, or if I'm acting pompous, it's a lesser attractive attribute or quality, and it's going to repel people with those qualities away from me. So, Dr. Wayne Dyer, he wrote a book a few years ago called Gifts from Icus. and I believe it's like a short story or something. But there's a line in there that's always stood out with me the last 10 years. It says, "There is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way." I remember for years, people would call me a clown, and I didn't take life seriously, and I think everything's a big joke. And there was some truth to that. But the flip side to that is I see people very hostile, very angry, and they had trouble making friends and attracting good relationships and having a good time. They were feeling entitled or slighted or whatever the case may be. And yes, I've had those feelings also. But looking back, maybe I did have the right take on life. You know, maybe what they were saying wasn't necessarily true. Maybe I having a good attitude and enjoying laughter and understanding that laughter can heal in the right circumstances. Maybe that's a better way to go. All right, so on page 88 in Sermon on the Mount, Emmett Fox continues. He says, "Whatever thoughts you do elect to dwell upon will presently be expressed in the outer world as things or events, but that is your lookout. Having thought certain thoughts, you have no power to change the outer consequences of these thoughts. Your choice lies in thinking or not thinking them in the first place. If you do not wish certain consequences to come to you, your business is to abstain from thinking them in the first place, or from thinking the kind of thoughts that will ultimate in them. Remember that whatever the mind dwells upon will sooner or later come into your experience. Thinking about sickness or disease is only one of the two factors that produce bodily ailments, and it is usually the less important. The other and more important factor is the entertainment of negative or destructive emotions, although this fact seems to be very little understood." So, you know, there's certain times where I dwell upon thoughts, and whether it's like a quick resentment or some type of fear, I'll get achy in my body. I'll get headaches. My, you know, if I'm thinking aggressively, you'll see this vein pop out of my head. I remember that basketball player Alonzo Mourning used to get that vein when he was playing basketball. Some people, that I feel bad for, they get the vein right down the forehead. You know what I mean? And when I'm feeling hostile, those things will happen. I'll get a little flush. I'll get achy, and it's not the same type of ache as when I'm laughing hysterically. You know, I remember when we used to go to Lake Berryessa, we'd be all good and boozed up, and then we'd take some hallucinogenic mushrooms back in the early 2000s, and we'd be laughing hysterically. I was in so much pain in my abdomen from laughing all night long, from hallucinating at the lake on these mushrooms. So it's not the same type of pain. You know, these types of pains come directly as a result of my feelings of anger and hostility and fear. And, you know, sometimes the diarrhea will kick in, or, you know, whatever the case may be. You get the gist of it. I'm sure everybody's gone through that. If not, please respond and let me know how you haven't had these types of reactions to, you know, negative thinking. Page 90, it says, "It cannot be too often repeated that to entertain feelings of anger, resentment, jealousy, spite, and so forth is certain to damage your health in some way or other, and quite likely to damage it very severely indeed." So whether you're getting immediate pain from your thoughts, if you're a guy like me, I get these thoughts and I start feeling ways I don't want to feel, physically and mentally. And if I didn't have a solution to tame these thoughts, I'd go and I'd drink alcohol, and then I'd make things 20 times worse, like I mentioned before. And then I had physical ailments on top of the drinking, right? And then I had relationship pain. People be disappointed or hurt or sad or scared or frightened or whatever it was, based on me reacting to life like this with these thoughts. So if I'm turning on the TV, right, and I'm hearing a bunch of people complain about you know, the news, or, you know, whatever, or people telling me how, you know, this is wrong and that's wrong, I usually, when I turn the channel off, I'm usually worked up about something, whether I agree or disagree. If somebody's getting slighted, whether it's me or the person involved, it doesn't make me feel better, right? What if the Dan Banchero show was based about me griping about social issues, politics, sports, policies, laws, the economy? You know, would anyone actually feel more at peace after tuning into the show if that was my goal. You know, the goal of this project on a weekly basis is to take readings that made me feel good. Maybe you'll go out to the library, pick up the book, or go buy it. You'll go through it. You'll feel good. You'll go tell somebody else about it and how it's changed your life, or maybe a concept that makes you feel better. You know, I'm not going to sit here and waste your time for 15 or 20 minutes to make you feel like shit, okay? This is about feeling good. You know, in the past, I've made videos on Instagram or Facebook, you know, regarding, you know, good dishes that somebody would give me. One of my accounts, you know, I do sales for produce or whatever. And somebody would give me a good dish, or, you know, I'd fool around and, yeah, I'd get a piece of pie. You know, other times in the last year and a half, I've been exposed to going out to the outdoors and feeling good in the outdoors. You know, these are all positive things. So now I want to take some literature that's inspired me. I want to congratulate these great visionaries and authors, and I want them to get credit for it, you know, and I want the others to feel just as good. Now, most of the time, if I'm looking for something wrong, or something wrong with somebody or something, just to be offended, I'm never disappointed. It always appears. But if I acknowledge positive aspects, somehow energy produces more experiences for me to enjoy in everyday life, in one way, shape, or form. Okay, so the 71st verse of the Tao Te Ching in Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Dr. Wayne Dyer, based on the writings of Lau Tzu. On page 334, it says, "Knowing ignorance is strength. Ignoring knowledge is sickness. Only when we are sick of our sickness shall we cease to be sick. The sage is not sick, but sick of sickness. This is the secret of health." So Dyer goes on page 335, he says, "Lau Tzu seems to be saying that one must actually become ill in order to avoid illness." Well, that makes sense to me. I had to be so tired of feeling and thinking the way I was for me to go ahead and make a move. You know? So what I do is, like as I was saying earlier, conditions such as fevers, aches, wheezing, sniffling, breathlessness, coughing, unusual fatigue, and fainting are indications of the presence of illness, and the equivalent of such symptoms in our thinking could be fear, anxiety, anger, hatred, worry, guilt, stress, impatience, and so on. These are signals that our thoughts are out of balance with our source, which is pure love, kindness, patience, contentment, and all of the other expressions of Tao-centeredness, which is spirit. So that's what Dyer was talking about on page 335. Next page, 336, he says, "I became sick of my sickness, as I was no longer willing to go through the withdrawals and shame that accompanied it. I saw my affliction not so much in the material world, but in the invisible world of my thoughts, which kept leading me back to illness." Boy, can I relate to that statement. Man, I thought he was talking to me. So, my thinking had me taking actions, causing consequences. I became the unfaithful boyfriend. I became the unreliable employee, the untrustworthy friend, the disappointing son, the unavailable father, and if you want to take it a real step further, a wannabe porn star. My thoughts directed me to make decisions and take in substances that made me a completely different person from what I am when I'm spiritually fit. And I take things and I totally go crazy with whatever was on my mind. Whatever I was putting my attention on, it would expand. I had to start taking responsibility for my life. I had to start appraising myself and then thinking and behaving as I would if I was to jot down the attributes of what I would want my best friend to be. I had to start thinking and behaving these ways on a more frequent basis. Otherwise, I was not going to change. My life was not going to get better. I was going to continue to suffer. You know, awareness is great, but I have got to continue to evaluate my conduct and make an effort to keep it aligned in goodwill in order to stay well. Because if I don't, look out. So I got to watch everything that I'm doing. I got to make sure I'm listening to positive types of music. I got to listen to things on the radio, maybe a positive talk, maybe pick up a book of some type of wellness. All these things that make me feel good, and that energy produces me to have even better experiences, and I get through days pretty smoothly. I have some bad moments where, you know, I don't quite see right off the bat where the lesson is to be learned, but life's going to be full of challenges, And if I'm willing to take these challenges and look at them as opportunities and know that there's going to be another door or window opening down the road, it's going to be all right. So I hope you enjoyed the Dan Banchero show for this week. I'm going to go ahead and hit this venti. And like we used to say with the click back in the early 2000s, here's the feeling good all the time. See you next week.